The transport ship Celestial Drift hummed through the darkness of space, carrying its cargo of passengers toward the mining colony on 7. Among the 300 souls aboard, one human sat alone in the observation deck, her eyes fixed on the stars streaming past the reinforced glass. Her name was Maya, and to everyone else on the ship, she was unremarkable. Small in stature, quiet in demeanor, she kept to herself during meals and spoke only when spoken to. The other passengers, mostly merchants with their blue-scaled skin and triple-jointed limbs, paid her little attention. Humans were common enough in this sector, and this one seemed particularly dull. "Another human," one had muttered to his companion during boarding. "They breed like vermin and spread across the galaxy like a disease." Maya had heard him. She heard everything. But she had simply adjusted the worn backpack on her shoulders and continued to her assigned quarters without a word. Now, 3 days into the journey, she sat in the observation deck during the night cycle when most passengers were asleep. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman in her early 30s with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing plain gray clothing that looked like standard colony work attire. Nothing about her suggested she was anything other than another laborer heading to the mines for work. The door behind her hissed open. Maya's eyes flicked to the reflection in the glass, tracking the newcomer without turning around. A larger-than-most with scars across his scales that spoke of a violent past. He wasn't alone. 3 others followed him in, spreading out to block the exits. "Human," the said, his voice carrying the clicking undertone common to his species. "You sit in our spot." Maya didn't move. "The observation deck is open to all passengers." "Not anymore." The moved closer, his companions following. "We don't like humans, you smell wrong, you look wrong, and you're in our space." She finally turned to face them, her expression neutral. "I'll move." As she stood, this hand shot out, shoving her back into the seat. "Too late for that. You disrespected us by being here in the first place." The largest of the 4 cracked his knuckles, a gesture that translated across species. Maya recognized the setup. This wasn't about territory or respect. This was about violence for its own sake, the kind of casual cruelty that predators inflicted on those they perceived as weak. "Please," she said quietly, "I don't want trouble." The laughed. "Hear that? The little human begs." He leaned down, his face close to hers. "Maybe a few." Maya moved. Her hand shot up, 2 fingers extended and jabbed into the soft tissue beneath this primary breathing slit. He choked, stumbling back, and before the others could react, she was on her feet. The second rushed her. Maya grabbed his extended arm and used his momentum to slam him face first into the observation glass. The reinforced material didn't crack, but the snows did. Purple blood sprayed across the transparent surface. The third attacker was smarter. He pulled a blade, a curved thing that gleamed in the starlight. He slashed at Maya's throat, a killing blow. She swayed back, the blade missing by millimeters, and her hand clamped around his wrist. A twist, a sharp crack, and the knife clattered to the floor. The howled, cradling his broken wrist. The leader had recovered. He pulled a plasma pistol from his belt, his face twisted in rage. "You're dead, human." Maya dove as he fired. The plasma bolt scorched the air where she'd been standing and melted a hole in the chair behind her. She rolled, came up with the dropped knife in her hand, and threw it in one smooth motion. The blade buried itself in this gun arm, and he dropped the weapon with a scream. 4 attackers, neutralized in less than 30 seconds. Maya stood among them, breathing steadily, her expression still neutral. She walked pulled the knife from his arm with clinical efficiency, and wiped the purple blood on his shirt. "You should get that looked at," she said quietly. Then she walked past them and out of the observation deck, leaving the 4 groaning and bleeding on the floor. She didn't return to her quarters. Instead, she made her way to the cargo hold, slipping past the basic security systems with practiced ease. Among the containers and shipping crates, she found a quiet corner and sat down, her back against a crate marked Mining Equipment 7. Maya closed her eyes and let out a slow breath. This was why she preferred to be alone. People saw a quiet human woman and made assumptions. They thought quiet meant weak. They thought small meant vulnerable. They never considered that someone might choose to be quiet for other reasons. Her chimed softly. Maya pulled it from her pocket and checked the encrypted message that had just arrived. The text was brief. "Target confirmed on 7. Mining operation is cover for trafficking ring. At least 40 sentients held against will. Local authorities compromised. Requires immediate intervention. Maya's finger hovered over the delete button, then stopped. She pulled up a second file, one she kept locked behind 3 layers of encryption. Images filled the screen. Dozens of faces, beings from across the galaxy, some smiling, some frightened, some already dead, all victims. She scrolled through them until she found what she was looking for. A young human girl, maybe 12 years old, with bright eyes and a gap-toothed smile. The next image showed the same girl, but different. The light had gone from her eyes. The smile was gone. The final image was a death certificate. Sarah, Maya's niece, dead at 13 in a trafficking operation on a colony world. The authorities had called it an accident, a terrible tragedy. They'd expressed their condolences and closed the case. Maya had spent 2 years proving it was murder, another year tracking the trafficking ring responsible, and 5 more years dismantling every operation connected to it, one brutal piece at a time. She was supposed to be retired. After the last operation on Vega Prime, where she'd freed 37 captives and left 12 traffickers for the authorities to collect, she'd promised herself she was done. She'd go to a quiet colony, find peaceful work, and try to remember what a normal life felt like. But then this message had come through. Another ring, another operation, more victims who needed someone to find them. Maya deleted the message and stood up. 7 was still 2 days away. She had time to prepare. The cargo hold was full of mining equipment, exactly as labeled. But Maya knew that mining operations required certain supplies: cutting torches, explosive charges for breaking rock, industrial adhesives, power cells, all completely legal and all very useful for someone with the right knowledge. She moved through the cargo hold like a shadow, selecting items and tucking them into her backpack. A small cutting torch, barely larger than her hand. 3 explosive charges, the kind used for controlled demolitions. A coil of industrial cable rated for extreme tension. A medical kit from one of the supply containers. She worked methodically, taking only what she needed and leaving no trace of her passage. By the time she returned to her quarters, she had everything required for the job ahead. She lay down on the narrow bunk and closed her eyes, but sleep didn't come easily. It never did, not anymore. The next morning, the ship was buzzing with news. 4 passengers had reported an attack in the observation deck. They claimed a crazed human had assaulted them without provocation. Ship security had reviewed the footage from the deck's cameras. Maya sat in the cafeteria, eating a bland protein bar and listening to the conversations around her. 2 at the next table were discussing it in loud voices. The footage showed them attacking her first, one said, his scales rippling with agitation. All 4 of them armed against 1 unarmed human. Impossible, his companion replied. How could 1 human defeat 4 warriors? That's what the footage shows. She moved like nothing I've ever seen, like a trained killer. Maya kept her expression neutral and continued eating. The security footage would show exactly what happened. Self-defense was legal on civilian transports. They would be confined to quarters for the remainder of the journey, and she would be left alone. But the incident had drawn attention to her, which was the last thing she wanted. Other passengers now gave her a wide berth when she passed them in the corridors. They whispered and stared. A small human woman had defeated 4 armed attackers, and suddenly she was no longer invisible. A trader, a species known for their blue fur and keen intelligence, sat down across from her without invitation. His amber eyes studied her with open curiosity. "You're military," he said. It wasn't a question. "Was," Maya replied. "Long time ago." "No such thing as was with training like that. Once a soldier, always a soldier." The whiskers twitched. "What branch? I served with human forces during the conflict. I know what your special operations units can do." Maya took another bite of her protein bar and said nothing. They leaned forward. "I'm not law enforcement if that's what worries you. Just curious. It's not every day you see someone move like you did last night. Those are bullies, but they're trained fighters. You took them apart like they were children." "They attacked me. I defended myself, that's all." "Of course," they stood up. "Word of advice, though. 7 is a rough colony. Mining operations attract rough people. Someone with your skills might find work there if they're looking for it, or trouble if they're not careful." He walked away, leaving Maya alone with her thoughts. This warning was unnecessary. She knew exactly what she was walking into on 7. She'd researched the colony extensively before booking passage on this ship. Seven was a small mining colony on the edge of corporate space, nominally under the authority of the Galactic Union, but effectively lawless. The mining company that owned the operation had a reputation for looking the other way when it came to worker conditions and local crime. The perfect place for a trafficking ring to operate. According to her intelligence, the ring was using the mining operation as cover. They brought in workers from across the sector, beings who had disappeared from their homes and families. Some were forced to work in the mines. Others were sold to private buyers. All of them were trapped with nowhere to run and no one to help them. Maya had seen it before. Trafficking rings thrived in places where no one looked too closely and everyone had a reason to stay silent. The authorities were either bought off or too scared to act. The victims had no voice, and the criminals continued their work, growing rich on the suffering of others. Not this time. The final day of the journey passed slowly. Maya spent most of it in her quarters, reviewing the intelligence she'd received and planning her approach. The colony had a population of about 800, mostly workers and support staff for the mining operation. Security was minimal, just enough to keep the workers in line and deal with the occasional dispute. The trafficking operation was run by a mid-level criminal who'd moved to 7 after his previous operation on Cygnus Station had been shut down. He had about 20 enforcers working for him, a mix of species chosen for their willingness to hurt people for money. They operated out of a warehouse on the edge of the colony, disguised as a storage facility for mining equipment. Maya had seen the layout of the warehouse from satellite imagery. 2 entrances, both guarded, reinforced walls, a basement level where the captives were likely held. It was a fortress designed to keep people out and keep victims in. She would need to get inside, locate the captives, neutralize the guards, and extract everyone before reinforcements arrived. Alone, with improvised equipment, on a hostile colony where she had no backup and no support. It was suicide. Any reasonable person would call for help, alert the proper authorities, and wait for a trained team to handle the situation. But Maya had learned long ago that waiting for help meant waiting for people to die, and she'd stopped being reasonable the day she'd buried her niece. The celestial drift dropped out of hyperspace on schedule, and 7 appeared in the observation windows. It was a small, gray world with minimal atmosphere, dotted with mining installations and habitation domes. Not a beautiful planet, but home to hundreds of workers who'd come here looking for honest work and a fresh start. The ship docked at the colony's main spaceport, a basic facility with just enough infrastructure to handle the cargo ships and passenger transports that serviced the mining operation. Maya gathered her backpack and joined the line of passengers disembarking. Colony security at the spaceport was perfunctory. A bored human in a worn uniform scanned her identification chip and waved her through without looking up. Maya walked into the colony proper and took her first breath of recycled air that tasted like dust and machinery. 7 was exactly what she'd expected. Gray corridors connecting gray buildings under a gray dome. Workers in gray uniforms moving between shifts. Everything designed for function, nothing for comfort. This was a place where people came to work hard, earn money, and leave as soon as they could afford to. Maya checked into a small boarding house near the spaceport, paying cash for a week in advance. The room was tiny and sparse, with a narrow bed, a basic sanitation unit, and nothing else. She locked the door behind her and set her backpack on the bed. First, she needed to scout the target. The warehouse where operated was on the eastern edge of the colony, a 20-minute walk from her boarding house. She needed to see it in person, identify the guard patterns, find the weak points in its security. Maya changed into dark clothing and pulled a hood over her head. The colony had cameras, but they were old and poorly maintained. She knew how to move through an area without being noticed. It was just another skill she'd learned in her previous life. The warehouse was larger than it had appeared in the satellite imagery. 3 stories tall, with high windows and a flat roof. 2 entrances, just as expected, both with armed guards. But as Maya circled the building from a safe distance, she noticed something the imagery hadn't shown. A ventilation shaft on the west side, partially hidden behind a stack of cargo containers. It was small, barely large enough for a person to crawl through, and it led directly into the building's ventilation system. The perfect entry point for someone who didn't mind tight spaces and knew how to bypass basic security. Maya spent 3 hours watching the warehouse, counting the guards, timing their patrols, noting every detail. By the time she returned to her boarding house, she had a complete picture of the operation. 23 guards visible on rotation, probably more inside. The captives would be in the basement, which meant she'd need to go down at least one level after entering through the ventilation shaft. She'd need to disable the power to eliminate the cameras and electronic locks, then extract the victims while dealing with at least 20 armed hostiles in a confined space. She sat on her bed and reviewed her equipment. A small cutting torch, 3 explosive charges, industrial cable, a medical kit. Against 23 armed guards, it wasn't much. But Maya had worked with less. She pulled up the image of her niece on her one more time. Sarah's smile looked back at her, frozen in that moment before everything had gone wrong. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you," Maya whispered to the image, "but I can save them." She set the aside and began to prepare. Tomorrow night's operation would come to an end, and those 40 captives would go free. Maya spent the next day blending into the colony's population. She wore the same gray work clothes as everyone else and kept her head down, moving through the crowded corridors like just another worker. But while everyone else was focused on their daily routines, Maya was working. She mapped every street, every alley, every emergency exit in the Eastern District where Warehouse stood. She noted which buildings had functioning fire suppression systems and which ones had been neglected. She identified 3 potential escape routes from the warehouse and memorized the location of every security camera between there and the spaceport. In the afternoon, she visited the colony's small commercial district. Most of the shops catered to miners, selling basic necessities and cheap entertainment. But Maya found what she needed in a maintenance supply store run by a tired-looking who barely glanced at her as she purchased a respirator mask, industrial gloves, and a small crowbar. "Mining work?" They asked as she rang up the purchase. "Something like that," Maya replied. The shopkeeper handed her the items in a plain bag. "Be careful out there. Colony's been dangerous lately. People disappearing. Security doesn't seem to care." Maya met this eyes. "What kind of people?" The shopkeeper hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Workers mostly, new arrivals. They show up for their first shift and never come back. Some say they just left, found better work elsewhere. But their belongings are still in their quarters. Their identification chip's still active in the system. They didn't leave. They're still here somewhere. And no one investigates." "Who's going to investigate?" Security chief's in pocket. "Everyone knows it. Everyone's too scared to do anything about it." They leaned forward. "You seem like someone who can handle herself. My advice, keep your head down. Don't go wandering around at night. And if you see people, walk the other way." Maya paid for her purchases and left the shop. This information confirmed what she already knew. Operated with impunity here, protected by corrupt officials and fear. The perfect predator in the perfect environment. That was about to change. As darkness fell over the colony, Maya returned to her room and laid out her equipment on the bed. The cutting torch, explosive charges, cable, medical kit, respirator, gloves, and crowbar. Not an impressive arsenal, but she'd learned long ago that weapons didn't win fights. Planning and determination did. She changed into dark, fitted clothing that would allow freedom of movement. No armor, nothing that would make noise or slow her down. She pulled her hair back tight and secured it. Then she checked her one final time, reviewing the warehouse layout and her planned entry route. The ventilation shaft on the west side. Up to the roof through the shaft, cut through into the main ventilation system, follow it down to the basement level, locate the captives, eliminate the guards, extract everyone before could organize a response. Simple, suicidal, necessary. Maya packed her equipment into her backpack and stepped out into the corridor. The boarding house was quiet at this hour, most residents already asleep or working the night shift in the mines. She moved silently down the stairs and out into the street. 7 at night was a different place than during the day. The main corridors were still lit, but the side streets and alleys were dark and empty. The colony's dome overhead showed nothing but blackness, the stars blocked by the constant dust storms that raged across the planet's surface. Maya kept to the shadows as she made her way toward the Eastern District. She encountered a few other people, all of them moving quickly with their heads down, not wanting to be out after dark any longer than necessary. No one paid attention to her. The warehouse loomed ahead, its bulk darker than the surrounding darkness. Lights burned in some of the windows on the upper floors, and Maya could see the silhouettes of guards moving past them. The main entrances were lit by harsh floodlights, 2 guards visible at each door. Maya circled around to the west side, using the cargo containers as cover. The ventilation shaft was exactly where she'd seen it during her earlier reconnaissance, a square metal grate about 2 feet on each side. She pulled the crowbar from her backpack and worked the grate free with careful, quiet movements. The shaft beyond was dark and narrow. Maya pulled on her respirator and gloves, then squeezed inside. The metal was cold against her hands as she crawled forward, moving deeper into the shaft. The air was stale and tasted like rust. After 20 feet, the shaft turned upward. Maya braced her back against one side and her feet against the other, then began to climb. It was slow work, every movement calculated to avoid making noise. Her muscles burned with the effort, but she kept going, ascending 1 foot at a time. The shaft opened into a larger ventilation duct after 30 feet of climbing. Maya pulled herself up and into it, finally able to stand in a crouch. She could hear voices now, muffled by the metal walls around her but distinct. The guards were close. She pulled out her and activated its scanning function. The device showed her position relative to the building's structure. She was on the 2nd floor, directly above where the basement level should be. She needed to find an access point that would let her descend. Maya moved through the ventilation system like a ghost, following the layout she'd memorized. The ducts branched and twisted, but she kept her orientation, always moving toward the center of the building where the main shaft descended to the lower levels. She found it after 10 minutes of careful navigation. A vertical shaft with a maintenance ladder used by workers to access the ventilation system for repairs. Maya descended into darkness, counting the floors as she went. 1st floor, ground level, then down into the basement. The shaft was colder here, and Maya could smell something that made her stomach turn. Unwashed bodies, fear, desperation, the smell of people who'd been held captive for too long. She found a ventilation grate that looked down into a large room. Through the metal slats she could see them, 47 people by her quick count. Humans and species she didn't immediately recognize, all of them sitting or lying on thin mats on the concrete floor. Some were injured, all looked broken. 2 guards stood by the only door, both armed with plasma rifles. They looked bored, not expecting any trouble from their captives. Maya studied the room's layout. The door was the only exit. No windows, concrete walls on all sides. The ventilation grate she was looking through was 7 feet off the floor, large enough for her to fit through if she removed it. She pulled out the cutting torch and set it to its lowest setting. The blue flame was barely visible in the darkness of the shaft. She began to cut through the bolts holding the grate in place, working with painstaking slowness to minimize the sound. 1 bolt, 2, 3. The 4th and final bolt gave way, and Maya caught the grate before it could fall. She set it aside quietly and looked down into the room again. The guards hadn't noticed anything. The captives were mostly sleeping or sitting in silence. This was the moment. Once she dropped into that room, there would be no going back. Maya thought of Sarah, of the life her niece should have had, of all the victims who died because someone hadn't acted. Then she dropped through the opening. She landed in a crouch, her knees absorbing the impact. The sound was minimal, but both guards turned toward her instantly. Their eyes widened in surprise. A small human woman had just fallen from the ceiling into their secured holding area. They were still processing this when Maya moved. She crossed the distance to the first guard in 3 quick steps and drove her knee into his throat. He went down gasping, his rifle clattering to the floor. The second guard raised his weapon, but Maya was already inside his reach. She grabbed the rifle barrel and redirected it as he fired. The plasma bolt scorched the ceiling instead of her. She twisted the rifle out of his hands, reversed it, and slammed the stock into his face. He stumbled back, and Maya hit him again, this time in the temple. He collapsed unconscious next to his companion. The entire encounter had taken less than 10 seconds. Maya quickly checked both guards, alive but out of action. She pulled plastic restraints from her backpack and secured their hands and feet, then gagged them with strips torn from their own clothing. The captives were staring at her now, their faces showing confusion and disbelief. A woman, her fur matted and dirty, was the first to speak. "Who are you?" "Someone who's getting you out of here," Maya replied. She moved to the door and pressed her ear against it, listening. Voices in the hallway beyond, but they were distant. She had time, but not much. She turned back to the captives. "Can everyone walk?" The woman nodded. "Most of us, 3 are injured badly. They'll need help." "We'll manage." Maya pulled out her medical kit and tossed it to the woman. "Do what you can for them in the next 5 minutes. We're leaving." A human man, probably in his 50s with a face, stood up. "The building is surrounded by guards. How do you plan to get us out?" "Very carefully." Maya moved back to the door. "How many guards are in the building right now?" "At least 20, the man replied. "Maybe more. They change shifts every 6 hours. Next shift change isn't for 3 more hours." "Good, that gives us time." Maya pulled one of her explosive charges from her backpack. "I'm going to create a distraction. When the guards respond to it, we're going out the front door." The captives exchanged glances. The plan sounded insane. It probably was insane. But they'd been prisoners here for weeks or months, and a slim chance at escape was better than no chance at all. Maya checked the door again, still clear. She turned to the group. "Stay quiet, stay together. When I give the signal, we move fast. Anyone who can't keep up gets carried. We all leave or none of us do. Understood?" Nods from everyone. These people had been broken but not defeated. They had fight left in them. Maya opened the door slowly, checking the hallway. Empty. She could hear voices from above, the guards on the upper floors going about their routine. They had no idea their prisoners were about to walk out. She led the group into the hallway, moving them toward the stairs. The basement only had one stairwell leading up, and it was exposed. This was the most dangerous part. If they encountered guards on the stairs, they'd be trapped with nowhere to run. They reached the stairs without incident. Maya held up a hand, signaling the group to wait, then crept up to the landing. The ground floor was above them, and she could hear multiple voices. A lot of guards were up there. This was where the distraction came in. Maya had placed the first explosive charge, a small device meant for controlled demolitions in mining operations. She'd set the timer before entering the building. Right about now, it should be. The explosion rocked the building. It came from the 3rd floor, where Maya had attached the charge to a support beam near the main power generator. The blast wouldn't bring down the building, but it would knock out power and send every guard running to investigate. The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. And Maya heard exactly what she'd hoped for, shouting, running footsteps, confusion. "Now," she whispered, "move." The captives surged up the stairs behind her. Maya led them onto the ground floor, which was indeed chaos. Guards were running toward the stairs to the upper levels, shouting orders at each other. In the darkness and confusion, none of them noticed the group of prisoners emerging from the basement. Maya guided them toward the main entrance. Through the windows, she could see the exterior guards had abandoned their posts to investigate the explosion. The path was clear. They were almost at the door when a voice shouted behind them, "Stop! How did you?" Maya didn't let him finish. She spun and threw the small crowbar. It wasn't designed as a weapon, but years of practice meant it flew true. The metal bar struck the guard in the head, and he went down. "Run," Maya shouted. She pulled open the main door and pushed the captives through. "Go, head for the spaceport, don't stop." They ran. 47 former captives poured out of the warehouse and into the street, scattering in the darkness. Some ran together, some alone, but all of them running for their lives. Maya came out last, just as more guards appeared behind her. Plasma fire lit up the night, bolts scorching the doorframe around her. She dove and rolled, came up running, and disappeared into the maze of alleys between buildings. Behind her, the warehouse was in chaos. Alarms blared, guards shouted, and somewhere in that confusion was realizing his operation had just been destroyed. Maya ran through the dark streets, taking a circuitous route back toward her boarding house. She couldn't go straight there. If any guards had gotten a good look at her, they might be able to track her. She needed to lose any potential pursuit first. She ducked into an alley, climbed a fire escape to a roof, crossed 3 buildings, and descended on the other side. She doubled back twice, always watching for followers. By the time she finally approached her boarding house, she was confident no one had tracked her. The building was quiet. Maya slipped inside and up to her room, locked the door behind her, and allowed herself to breathe. Phase 1 was complete. The captives were free, but the job wasn't done. Was still out there, still dangerous, and he'd be looking for whoever had destroyed his operation. Maya pulled out her and sent a message to the local Galactic Union representative, a human named who'd been trying to build a case against for months without success. The message was simple. 47 freed captives heading to spaceport. They'll need protection and transport. Evidence of trafficking operation in warehouse basement. Act now before it's destroyed. She deleted the message from her outbox immediately after sending it. Would either act on the information or he wouldn't, but at least he'd have the chance to do the right thing. Dawn came to 7 like it always did, with artificial lights gradually brightening throughout the colony dome. Maya was already awake, sitting by her room's small window and watching the street below. She'd slept for 3 hours, which was more than she usually managed after an operation. The colony was different this morning. Groups of people stood on corners, talking in hushed voices. News traveled fast in a small community, and everyone had heard about the warehouse explosion and the escaped captives by now. Maya could see the tension in how people moved, the way they glanced over their shoulders. Her chimed softly, a news alert from the colony's public feed. She opened it and read. Explosion at East District warehouse under investigation. Colony security reports structural damage. No casualties confirmed. Residents advised to avoid the area. No mention of the freed captives, no mention of the trafficking operation. The colony's administration was trying to keep things quiet, probably on orders. But that wouldn't last. Would have found the captives by now. He'd have their testimonies. Even corrupt officials couldn't ignore evidence that overwhelming. Unless they tried. Maya's chimed again. This time it was an encrypted message, routed through multiple relays to hide its origin. She recognized the signature. Received 43 captives at Spaceport, 4 still unaccounted for. All survivors confirmed trafficking operation, requesting immediate backup from regional GU office. Your assistance appreciated, but please maintain low profile. Has significant resources and is extremely dangerous. 43, 4 were still missing. Maya felt ice settle in her stomach. 4 people who hadn't made it to the spaceport. Either they'd gotten lost in the confusion or people had recaptured them. She couldn't leave them behind, not after getting this far. Maya gathered her remaining equipment and checked her backpack. She still had 2 explosive charges, the cutting torch, and the industrial cable. Not much for what was coming, but it would have to be enough. She left the boarding house through a back exit, avoiding the main entrance where cameras might catch her image. The streets were busier now as the day shift workers headed to the mines. Maya blended into the crowd, just another gray-clad figure in a sea of laborers. She needed information. 4 missing captives meant had them, but where? The warehouse was compromised, swarming with investigators by now. He'd have moved them somewhere else, somewhere he felt secure. Maya's mind went through the possibilities. Was a criminal, but he wasn't stupid. He knew his operation on 7 was finished. He'd be planning his exit, probably already arranging transport off-world. But he wouldn't leave without making a statement. Men like him needed everyone to know they couldn't be beaten. The missing captives weren't just prisoners anymore. They were hostages. She needed to find someone who knew organization from the inside. Someone scared enough to talk, but not so loyal they'd warn him. Maya remembered the shopkeeper from yesterday, the woman who'd warned her about. People like that heard things, saw things. They survived by knowing everyone's business. Maya made her way back to the maintenance supply store. The same was behind the counter, but she looked different today. Tired, frightened. Her fur was standing on end, a sign of stress in her species. The woman recognized Maya immediately. I heard what happened last night. People are saying it was one person who freed those captives, a human woman. People say a lot of things, Maya replied quietly. She approached the counter, making sure no other customers were in the store. I need information. Took 4 of the people who escaped. Where would he take them? The sighs went wide. You're insane. After what you did, he'll be looking for you. Every enforcer he has is out there right now, searching, if they find you. Where would he take them? Maya repeated. The shopkeeper hesitated, her whiskers twitching. Then she leaned forward and lowered her voice. There's a ship, private transport, docked at Bay 7 in the spaceport, registered to a company that doesn't exist, owns it. He's been moving cargo on and off it for weeks. Not mining equipment, people. He's planning to leave, and he'll take those 4 with him. When? Today, maybe in the next few hours. Security at the spaceport has been ordered to ignore that ship, no inspections. He'll just board and launch, and no one will stop him. Maya nodded, thank you. Wait, they reached under the counter and pulled out a small plasma pistol. Take this. You freed my cousin last night. She was one of the captives in that warehouse. I owe you. Maya accepted the weapon and checked its charge. Full power cell enough for about 20 shots. Your cousin made it to the spaceport. Yes, she's with the GU representative now, giving her testimony. She said there was a human woman who came out of nowhere, took down guards like they were nothing, and led everyone to freedom. The eyes shimmered. My cousin thought she was going to die in that place. You gave her back her life. I'm just finishing what I started. Maya tucked the pistol into her belt under her jacket. If anyone asks, you never saw me. What are you going to do? Stop from leaving. The stared at her. The spaceport is full of his people. Security is in his pocket. You'll be walking into a trap. Then I'd better be careful. Maya turned to leave, then paused. Tell your cousin I'm glad she's safe. She left the store before they could respond. The spaceport was a 20-minute walk from here, but Maya took a more circuitous route, staying off the main streets where she might be recognized. She moved through maintenance corridors and service passages, areas where workers came and went without much attention. Bay 7 was on the far side of the spaceport, used for private vessels. Maya approached it carefully, using cargo containers and parked vehicles as cover. Through the bay's observation window, she could see the ship. It was a medium transport, designed for cargo but modified with extra fuel tanks and upgraded engines. The kind of ship smugglers and criminals favored, fast enough to outrun patrol vessels, large enough to carry significant cargo. The loading ramp was down, and Maya could see movement inside. She counted 6 guards around the ship's exterior. All armed, all alert, was taking no chances. Inside the ship, there would be more. And somewhere in there, 4 terrified people were waiting to be sold to the highest bidder. Maya found a vantage point behind a stack of shipping containers about 50 yards from the ship. She pulled out her and accessed the spaceport systems. Security was lax here, and she'd learned basic hacking skills years ago. It took her 10 minutes to find what she needed, the ship's registration and flight plan. The ship was scheduled to launch in 90 minutes. Destination listed as Vega Prime, but that was certainly false. Once in space, could go anywhere, and finding him again would be nearly impossible. She had to stop the launch, but she couldn't just attack the ship. Even if she somehow took out all the guards, would just seal the ship and launch anyway. She needed a different approach. Maya studied the spaceport's layout on her. Every bay had safety systems, automated protocols designed to prevent accidents during launches, fuel leak detectors, fire suppression systems, emergency lockdowns, all controlled by the spaceport's central computer. If those systems detected a hazard, they'd prevent the ship from launching until the situation was resolved. And if Maya could trigger a false alarm, she'd buy time for and his people to arrive. But she needed to get close to the ship to plant the device that would trigger the alarm, which meant going through the guards. Maya checked the plasma pistol, 20 shots, 6 exterior guards, probably another 6 to 10 inside the ship. Not good odds, but she'd worked with worse. She needed a distraction, something to draw the guards away from the ship. She looked around the bay and spotted it, a fuel depot on the far side where ships refueled before departure. It was automated, controlled remotely, but the physical equipment was right there. If something went wrong with it, alarms would sound, and every guard in the bay would respond. Maya pulled out one of her 2 remaining explosive charges. This one was larger than what she'd used at the warehouse, designed for breaking through solid rock. In an open space like this, it would make a lot of noise and light but not cause serious damage. Perfect for a distraction. She moved carefully through the bay, using cover to stay out of sight. It took her 15 minutes to work her way around to the fuel depot. The guards near ship were focused on their immediate area, not watching the rest of the bay. Maya planted the explosive charge on the fuel depot's control panel and set the timer for 3 minutes. Then she retreated to a safe distance and waited. The explosion, when it came, was spectacular. The charge didn't breach the fuel tanks, but it destroyed the control panel in a shower of sparks and smoke. Alarms began blaring immediately, and red warning lights flashed throughout the bay. The guards reacted exactly as Maya had hoped. All 6 exterior guards ran toward the fuel depot, weapons drawn, shouting at each other about a possible sabotage attempt. The ship's loading ramp remained down, but Maya could see through the bay window that guards were rushing out of the ship as well. She had maybe 2 minutes before they realized the explosion was a distraction. That would have to be enough. Maya sprinted toward the ship, staying low and moving fast. She reached the loading ramp without being spotted and darted inside. The ship's interior was cramped and utilitarian, all metal corridors and harsh lighting. She could hear voices ahead, guards discussing the explosion. She needed to find the captives before the guards returned. The ship's layout was standard for this class of vessel: cargo hold in the rear, crew quarters, and cockpit forward. Prisoners would be in the cargo hold, the most secure area. Maya moved aft, the plasma pistol ready in her hand. She turned a corner and came face to face with a guard, a massive with scales the color of old blood. His eyes widened in surprise, and his hand moved toward his weapon. Maya shot him. The plasma bolt caught him in the chest, and he went down without a sound. She stepped over his body and continued deeper into the ship. The cargo hold door was sealed with an electronic lock. Maya pulled out her and connected it to the lock's control panel. Her hacking skills were basic, but this was a commercial lock, not military grade. It took her 30 seconds to bypass it. The door slid open, and Maya found them. 4 people, 3 humans and 1, huddled together in the corner of the cargo hold. They were bruised and terrified, but alive. "Come with me," Maya said. "We're leaving now." A young male with torn clothing stared at her. "Who are you?" "Someone who came back for you. Can you walk?" They could. Maya led them out of the cargo hold and back toward the loading ramp. They were halfway there when she heard a voice behind them, cold and controlled. "Stop." Maya turned. Stood in the corridor, but this one was different from the guards. He wore expensive clothing, and his scales were adorned with intricate markings that spoke of high status among his species. His eyes were intelligent and cruel. He held a plasma rifle, aimed directly at Maya. "You're the one, the human who destroyed my operation. I've been looking forward to meeting you." "Let them go," Maya said calmly. "Your operation here is finished. The GU has 43 witnesses ready to testify. You're done." "Perhaps," smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "But I'll be gone before they can arrest me, and I'll take my remaining merchandise with me." "They're not merchandise, they're people." "Semantics," he gestured with the rifle. "Drop your weapon." Maya didn't move. Her mind was racing, calculating angles and distances, was 20 feet away. The plasma rifle was aimed at her center mass. At this range, he couldn't miss. But if she dove to the side, rolled, and came up shooting. "Don't," said, reading her intention. "You're fast, I can see that. Maybe you even think you're fast enough to dodge a plasma bolt. You're not. Drop the weapon, or I'll shoot one of them instead." He shifted his aim to the captives behind her. Maya looked at the 4 terrified faces behind her. Then she looked back at and slowly lowered the pistol to the floor. "Wise choice," said. "Now kick it toward me." She did. The pistol skittered across the metal floor and stopped at his feet. "You've cost me a great deal," continued, lowering the rifle slightly now that she was unarmed. "Millions in lost inventory and infrastructure, my entire operation on this worthless rock. I should kill you for that." "Then do it," Maya said quietly. "Oh, I will, but first I want to know who you are. You're clearly military special operations, if I had to guess. Human military training at its finest. What brings someone like you to 7? Surely not these worthless captives." Maya said nothing, walked closer, the rifle still pointed at her. "Silent type, I see. No matter, I'll—" He never finished the sentence. The explosion came from above them, inside the ship. Maya's second and final explosive charge, which she'd planted in the ship's cockpit before coming to the cargo hold. The blast destroyed the flight controls and started a fire. Spun toward the sound, and Maya moved. She covered the distance between them in 2 seconds, grabbed the rifle barrel and twisted it aside as he fired. The plasma bolt scorched the ceiling. She drove her knee into his stomach, and he doubled over. Maya wrenched the rifle from his hands, reversed it, and slammed the stock into the side of his head. He fell, dazed but not unconscious. She raised the rifle to fire, but alarms started blaring throughout the ship. The fire suppression systems had activated, and foam began spraying from ceiling vents. "Move," Maya shouted to the captives. She grabbed by his collar and dragged him toward the loading ramp. The 4 freed prisoners ran ahead of her, coughing in the foam and smoke. They tumbled out of the ship onto the bay floor. Guards were everywhere now, rushing toward them. Maya raised the rifle, but before she could fire, a voice boomed across the bay. "Everyone freeze, Galactic Union Authority." Strode into the bay, flanked by 20 armed GU security officers. Behind them, Maya could see even more officers securing the perimeter. Approached. his eyes moving from Maya to the smoking ship. "I got your message," he said to Maya. "Figured you might need backup." Maya looked at the unconscious at her feet, then at the 4 freed captives who were being checked by medics. Then she looked back at, "You're late." He smiled slightly. "But I'm here, and thanks to you we have enough evidence to put him away for the rest of his miserable life." He gestured to his officers. "Take him into custody. Full charges, trafficking, kidnapping, attempted murder, and about 40 other violations." As the officers moved forward to arrest, turned back to Maya. "You need to come with me, give a statement at least." "I'd rather not." "I know, but you just took down a major trafficking operation single-handedly. People are going to have questions." Maya was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The 4 missing captives are safe now, 47 total freed, that's what matters." "It is, but—" "I'll send you a written statement, encrypted. You can use it however you need." Maya handed him the rifle and started walking toward the bay exit. "Wait," called after her, "at least tell me your name." Maya paused and looked back. For a moment she considered telling him, considered stepping into the light and letting herself be recognized for what she'd done. But then she remembered why she'd started this work in the first place. It wasn't about recognition or glory. It was about people like Sarah who'd had no one to save them. 3 days after the incident at the spaceport, Maya sat in a small on the opposite side of 7, watching the news reports on a public screen. The story had exploded across the sector. 47 freed captives, a major trafficking ring dismantled, and 19 of his enforcers in custody. The media was calling it a miracle. The freed captives were calling their rescuer a ghost, and the Galactic Union was calling it a successful operation carried out by their brave security forces, with helpful assistance from an unnamed informant. Maya sipped her synthetic coffee and watched give an interview. He looked tired but satisfied. When the reporter asked him about the mysterious woman who'd freed the captives, his expression became careful. "We're still investigating all aspects of the operation," he said diplomatically. "What matters is that innocent people are safe and the criminals responsible are facing justice." Smart man, he knew Maya didn't want attention and he was protecting her identity. She appreciated that. But not everyone was content to let the story end there. The Galactic News Network had interviewed several of the freed captives, and they all told the same story. A small human woman who'd appeared in their prison like an apparition, who'd fought through armed guards without hesitation, who'd led them to freedom and then disappeared. The human man with the face was particularly eloquent. "She moved like death itself," he told the interviewer. "Quiet, efficient, unstoppable. The guards were trained fighters, but she went through them like they were nothing. I was special forces for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like her." The woman whose cousin owned the maintenance shop was less poetic but more direct. "She saved my life. Whoever she is, wherever she is, I hope she knows that 47 families have their loved ones back because of her. That means something." Maya finished her coffee and stood up. There was nearly empty, just a few workers grabbing quick meals between shifts. No one paid attention to the quiet woman in gray work clothes. That was how she preferred it. She'd planned to leave 7 the day after the operation. A transport ship was scheduled to depart for the Outer Rim, and she had enough credits for passage. But something had stopped her from booking the ticket, a nagging feeling that the job wasn't finished. Was in custody, but he was just one criminal in a vast network. His operation on 7 had been significant, but it was also just one node in a larger web of trafficking rings that stretched across the galaxy. Maya had spent 7 years tracking that network, dismantling it piece by piece, and she knew how it worked. Had suppliers, partners, customers, all of them would be scrambling now, trying to distance themselves from his arrest. Some would go quiet, disappearing into the shadows, but others would try to salvage what they could, moving to fill the power vacuum had left behind. Maya returned to her boarding house and pulled out her. She'd been monitoring encrypted channels used by criminal organizations, looking for any chatter about his arrest. For 2 days, there'd been nothing but silence. But this morning, something had changed. A message had appeared on a channel used by high-level traffickers. It was brief and coded, but Maya had learned to read between the lines. "V operation compromised. Assets at T7 burned. Recommend immediate sweep of remaining network before GU traces connections. Meeting at usual location in 72 hours to discuss restructuring." They were planning to clean house, eliminate evidence, silence witnesses, and rebuild their operation somewhere else. And they were meeting in 72 hours to coordinate. Maya didn't know where usual location was, but she knew someone who might. She encrypted a message and sent it to. Checks communications logs. His partners are planning a meeting in 72 hours. If you move fast, you can take down the entire network. She hesitated before sending a second message. Be careful, these people are dangerous and they know GU is investigating now. They'll be ready for you. His response came 20 minutes later. Already on it, found evidence of at least 6 other operations connected too. Problem is jurisdiction, most are outside GU space. We can share intelligence but can't act directly. Will take months or years to coordinate with local authorities, assuming they're not corrupt. Maya stared at the message. Months or years, while those operations continued, while more people were taken, sold, and destroyed. The legal system was necessary, but it was slow, too slow for the victims who were suffering right now. She sent back a simple question, "Where's the meeting?" His response took longer this time. When it came, Maya could sense his hesitation even through the encrypted text. I shouldn't tell you this, but the meeting location is on Obsidian Station, a private installation in neutral space. It's owned by a consortium of businesses, legal and otherwise. Station security is private, well-armed, and they don't cooperate with GU. If you're thinking what I think you're thinking, don't. It's suicide. Maya pulled up information on Obsidian Station. It was exactly as had described. A massive space station on the edge of civilized space, technically independent, practically lawless. Home to about 50,000 residents, most of them involved in businesses that skirted or openly violated galactic law. The station had its own military-grade defense systems and a security force that rivaled some planetary militaries. Ships entering Obsidian Station space were scanned and searched. Weapons were allowed, but any violence on the station was met with immediate and brutal response from security. It was a fortress, a safe haven for criminals who could afford the station's high docking fees and even higher bribes. And in 72 hours, the leaders of a galaxy-spanning trafficking network would meet there to plan their next moves. Maya should walk away. She'd done what she came to 7 to do. 47 people were safe, was in custody. Her work here was done. Any reasonable person would leave, let the authorities handle the rest, and try to find some peace. But Maya hadn't been reasonable in a long time, not since Sarah. She booked passage on a transport ship leaving for Obsidian Station in 6 hours. The ticket cost most of her remaining credits, but she wouldn't need much money where she was going. She packed her few belongings, left her room key at the boarding house desk, and headed for the spaceport. The transport ship was called the Meridian Runner, a commercial vessel that carried both passengers and cargo. It wasn't fancy, but it was fast, and it made regular runs to Obsidian Station. Maya boarded with the other passengers, found her assigned cabin, and settled in for the 3-day journey. She spent the time preparing. She had no equipment now, having left everything behind on 7 to avoid suspicion during boarding. Obsidian Station's security would scan her thoroughly when she arrived. She couldn't bring weapons or anything that might be flagged as dangerous. But she didn't need weapons. Not yet. First, she needed to get onto the station, identify the meeting location, and figure out who would be attending. Then she could make a plan. The Meridian Runner dropped out of hyperspace on schedule, and Obsidian Station appeared in the viewing ports. It was impressive, Maya had to admit. A massive wheel-shaped structure rotating slowly in space, generating artificial gravity through spin. Lights blazed from thousands of windows, and ships of all sizes swarmed around it like insects around a lamp. The station's security hailed them immediately. Meridian Runner, this is Obsidian Station Control. Prepare for boarding and inspection. Any resistance will be met with lethal force. The inspection team came aboard 30 minutes later. 6 heavily armed guards in black armor, carrying weapons that looked military-grade. They moved through the ship with professional efficiency, scanning cargo and passengers with handheld devices. When they reached Maya, one of the guards, a human woman with cold eyes, studied her scan results. Purpose of visit. Business, Maya replied quietly. What kind of business? Private security consultation. It was vague enough to be believable. Obsidian Station was home to dozens of private security firms, and consultants came and went regularly. The guard studied her for another moment, then nodded. "You're clear. Welcome to Obsidian Station. Station rules are displayed on the public terminals. Violations will result in immediate detention and forcible removal. Enjoy your stay." The inspection team moved on, and Maya allowed herself a quiet breath. She was in. The station's interior was unlike anything she'd seen before. Where most space stations were utilitarian, all function and no form, Obsidian Station was designed to impress. The main promenade was wide and tall, with shops and restaurants lining both sides. Holographic advertisements floated in the air, promoting everything from luxury goods to illegal weapons. The people here were different too. Wealthy traders, armed mercenaries, criminals trying to look legitimate, and everywhere the black-armored security guards watching everything with hard eyes. Maya found a cheap hotel in the station's lower levels, far from the expensive districts where the trafficking bosses would meet. She checked in, paying cash, and went to her room to think. She had 68 hours until the meeting. She needed to find out where it would happen and who would attend. But information like that wouldn't be easy to get on a station where everyone had secrets. She started in the obvious place, the station's information networks. Like most space stations, Obsidian had public data terminals scattered throughout the promenade. Maya found one in a quiet corner and began searching. The station's official network was heavily monitored and censored. But beneath it, like every station she'd ever been on, there was an unofficial network. A black market for information where people bought and sold secrets for credits. Maya had used these networks before. They were dangerous, full of scammers and informants, but sometimes they were the only way to get what you needed. She accessed the black market network through a series of proxies and encryption layers. Finding the right channel took time, but eventually she located what she was looking for, a marketplace where information brokers sold intelligence about station activities. Maya posted a query, carefully worded to avoid attracting too much attention. Looking for information about upcoming business meetings in private conference facilities, willing to pay premium rates for accurate details. The response came within minutes, a private message from someone using the handle Shadow Trader. Expensive meetings happening in next few days, very private, very dangerous people. Information like this costs 50,000 credits. Maya had maybe 5,000 credits left to her name. She typed back. Can't afford 50,000. Can offer 10,000 plus valuable information about recent GU operations. There was a long pause, then. What kind of information? The kind that might save your life if you're connected to certain trafficking operations. Another pause, longer this time. Finally. Meet me in person, 7 Maintenance Corridor 12. 1 hour, come alone and unarmed, any betrayal and you're dead. Maya logged off and sat back. It was a trap, probably, but it was also her only lead. She had to take the chance. She arrived at the meeting location 10 minutes early and scouted the area. Maintenance Corridor 12 was a narrow passage in the station's industrial section, dimly lit and far from the main population centers. Perfect place for an ambush. Shadow Trader appeared exactly on time. He was smaller than most of his species, with nervous eyes and scales that constantly shifted color, a sign of anxiety. 2 large enforcers flanked him, both armed. You're alone, he observed. Good, now what information do you have? First, tell me about the meeting. No, information first, then I decide if it's worth what I know. Maya considered him. He was scared, she could see that. Scared enough to take risks, but smart enough to be cautious. She made a decision. This entire operation on 7 was taken down 3 days ago. The GU has 47 witnesses, detailed records of the trafficking network, and is cooperating to reduce his sentence. They know about the meeting in 68 hours. They're planning to move on everyone connected to operations. The color drained from Shadow Trader's scales. How do you know this? Because I'm the one who freed the captives. The 2 enforcers reached for their weapons, but Shadow Trader held up a hand to stop them. You're her, the ghost everyone's talking about. He studied Maya with new respect and considerable fear. What do you want? The meeting location, names of everyone attending, and any security details you have. Why would I give you that? These people are dangerous if they find out I talked. They're going down anyway, Maya interrupted. The GU knows about the meeting. They're sharing intelligence with every authority in the sector. The network is finished. Your only chance is to cooperate, give them everything you know, and hope for leniency. You're asking me to betray people who will kill me if they find out. I'm telling you they're already finished. You can help take them down and maybe survive, or you can stay loyal and go down with them. Your choice. Shadow Trader looked at his enforcers, then back at Maya. If I tell you what happens to me, you contact at the GU office on 7. Tell him everything you know. He'll protect you in exchange for testimony. And you, what are you going to do? Make sure that meeting never happens. Shadow Trader's eyes widened. You can't. The station's security will kill you. Even if you somehow get past them, these trafficking bosses have their own guards. You'll be going up against 50 armed professionals. 68, Maya corrected quietly. I counted the security details in the intelligence reports. 68 guards total, plus the 8 trafficking bosses themselves. And you think you can stop them, alone? Maya met his eyes. I don't think I know. Something in her voice made Shadow Trader believe her. Or maybe it was the complete absence of doubt in her expression. Whatever it was, he made his decision. Conference Room Alpha 7, executive level. The meeting starts in 68 hours at 1400 station time. 8 crime bosses will attend, former partners. Security will be locked down tight. No weapons allowed in the conference room itself, but the guards will be right outside. Names. Do you know what you're asking? These are some of the most dangerous criminals in the galaxy. The Butcher. The twins, they've killed hundreds, maybe thousands, and you want to walk into a room with all of them. Names, Maya repeated. Shadow Trader sighed and pulled out a data chip. Everything I know is on here. Meeting location, attendees, security protocols, guard rotations. If you're really going to do this, you'll need all of it. Maya took the chip. Thank you. Don't thank me, just survive, and if you do take them down. He paused. Make sure knows I helped. I want protection, a new identity, the whole package. You'll get it. Shadow Trader and his enforcers left quickly, clearly eager to be away from her. Maya watched them go, then looked down at the data chip in her hand. Maya spent the next 60 hours studying every detail on the data chip. The conference room layout, guard rotation schedules, security protocols, escape routes. She memorized it all until she could navigate the executive level with her eyes closed. The executive level was the most secure area of Obsidian Station, requiring special clearance to access. Maya didn't have clearance, but she had something better, patience and observation. She spent hours watching the executive level entrance from across the corridor, noting who came and went, how they were checked, what credentials they showed. Most visitors were wealthy, all legitimate on the surface. But Maya recognized the patterns. These were criminals wearing expensive clothes, hiding their true nature behind corporate fronts and polite manners. They entered the executive level through a security checkpoint manned by 4 guards. Biometric scans, credential verification, weapon detection. Getting through would be nearly impossible. Unless you didn't try to go through the checkpoint. Maya had noticed something during her observation. Every 6 hours, maintenance workers entered the executive level through a service entrance on the opposite side. They carried equipment, pushed carts full of supplies, and were waved through with minimal checks. Station security didn't see maintenance workers as threats. They were invisible, part of the background. That was her way in. She visited a uniform supply store in the commercial district and purchased maintenance worker clothing. Gray coveralls, tool belt, identification badge that looked official enough to pass a casual inspection. She couldn't forge the electronic security clearance, but she was counting on the guards being lazy when it came to checking maintenance staff. The day of the meeting arrived. Maya woke early, reviewed her plan one final time, and destroyed the data chip. She couldn't risk it being found on her if something went wrong. Everything she needed was already memorized. She dressed in the maintenance uniform, pulled her hair back, and added a smudge of grease to her face for authenticity. Then she took a service elevator down to 4, where maintenance workers reported for their shifts. The maintenance area was busy with workers preparing for their daily rounds. Maya blended in, grabbing a tool kit and joining a group heading toward the executive level. They chatted about mundane things, station gossip, and shift schedules. No one questioned her presence. At the service entrance to the executive level, 2 guards stood watch. They looked bored, like they'd done this same routine thousands of times. The lead maintenance worker showed his credentials, and the guard waved the group through without checking anyone else. Maya was inside. The executive level was different from the rest of the station. Carpeted floors instead of metal grating, soft lighting instead of harsh fluorescence, artwork on the walls. This was where the wealthy and powerful conducted their business, far above the crowds and noise below. The maintenance group split up, each worker heading to their assigned areas. Maya followed the corridor map she'd memorized, moving toward the conference room section. She passed well-dressed people who didn't even glance at her. To them, she was just another maintenance worker beneath their notice. Conference Room Alpha 7 was in the center of the executive level, surrounded by smaller meeting rooms and offices. Maya could see the increased security from 100 yards away. Black-armored guards at every intersection. More guards stationed outside the conference room doors. And these weren't the lazy checkpoint guards. These were professionals, alert and ready. She counted them, 24 guards in the immediate area. More would be inside the conference room section itself. Shadow Trader's intelligence had been accurate. Maya found a maintenance closet near the conference room section and slipped inside. She had 4 hours until the meeting started. Time to prepare. She opened the toolkit she'd taken from the maintenance area. Nothing useful as a weapon, just standard repair tools. But Maya had learned long ago that any object could be a weapon if you knew how to use it. The question was how to use maintenance tools against 68 armed guards and 8 crime bosses. The answer was, she wouldn't. Direct confrontation was suicide. She needed a different approach. Something that would neutralize the guards and trap the crime bosses without triggering the station's security response. She pulled out her and accessed the station's maintenance systems. Obsidian Station was old, built decades ago, and its systems had been patched and updated many times. That meant vulnerabilities, gaps in security, ways to access systems that shouldn't be accessible. Maya found what she needed in the environmental controls. The conference room section had its own independent life support system, separate from the rest of the station. Temperature, air pressure, oxygen mixture, all controlled from a central hub, and that hub was accessible through the maintenance network. She began to work, her fingers flying across She didn't have administrative access, but she didn't need it. She just needed to trigger a false alarm in the life support system, make it look like there was a critical malfunction, the kind that would force an immediate evacuation of the conference room section. It took her 2 hours to set up. By the time she finished, she had created a cascading alarm that would make the station's safety systems think there was a toxic gas leak in the conference room section. Not real, but convincing enough that automated protocols would kick in. Emergency bulkheads would seal, evacuation orders would sound, and most importantly, security would be forced to clear the area. She set the alarm to trigger 30 minutes after the meeting started. The crime bosses would be in the conference room, focused on their discussion. The guards would be outside, waiting, and then chaos. Maya left the maintenance closet and made her way to the conference room's observation level. It was a small balcony overlooking the main conference room, used by station personnel to monitor high-profile meetings. Officially, it was off-limits during private conferences, but the door was just a simple lock, easily bypassed. She slipped inside and found a position where she could see the conference room below. The room was impressive. A large oval table surrounded by comfortable chairs, holographic displays on the walls, expensive artwork. The kind of place where deals worth millions were made. 30 minutes until the meeting, Maya settled in to wait. The crime bosses arrived on schedule. She watched them enter one by one, each flanked by personal guards who were forced to wait outside. Was first, a massive with scars across every inch of his scales. Then, a female known for her ruthlessness. The twins, 2 humans who'd built their empire on suffering. 5 others followed, all of them radiating the confidence of people who'd never faced real consequences for their actions. They took their seats around the conference table. No weapons, as per the agreement, just 8 criminals discussing how to rebuild their trafficking network after arrest. Maya watched them talk. She couldn't hear what they were saying through the soundproof glass, but she could see their expressions. They weren't worried. They thought they were safe here, protected by station security and their own guards. They were wrong. The alarm triggered exactly on time. Red lights began flashing throughout the conference room section. An automated voice announced, "Critical environmental failure detected. Toxic gas leak in progress. All personnel evacuate immediately. Emergency protocols activated. The crime bosses jumped to their feet, confusion on their faces. The conference room doors burst open as guards rushed in to evacuate them. But the emergency bulkheads were already closing, sealing off the conference room section from the rest of the executive level. Maya moved. She dropped from the observation balcony into the conference room, landing in a crouch among the confused crime bosses and guards. For a split second, everyone froze, trying to understand what was happening. Then Maya moved like she'd been born for this. She grabbed a guard's plasma pistol from his holster before he could react. A quick shot to his leg, non-lethal but incapacitating. She spun, caught a second guard's arm as he reached for his weapon and broke it with a sharp twist. He screamed and fell. The conference room erupted into chaos. Guards rushed forward, but they were packed too tightly, getting in each other's way. Maya used their confusion against them. She stayed low, moving constantly, never presenting a stable target. She shot the third guard in the shoulder, dropped the fourth with a kick to the knee. The fifth guard finally got his weapon clear and fired. The plasma bolt passed so close to Maya's head she felt the heat. She rolled, came up behind him, and knocked him unconscious with a strike to the base of his skull. 5 guards down in 20 seconds. The remaining guards inside the conference room were regrouping, trying to form a defensive line around the crime bosses. But the emergency protocols were working against them. Containment foam was spraying from the ceiling vents, making the floor slippery. Emergency lights were flashing. The automated alarm was still blaring. Maya targeted the guards systematically. She didn't try to kill them, just incapacitate. A shot to the leg here, a disabling strike there. She moved like water, flowing around their attacks, always in motion. The crime bosses finally realized what was happening. One of them roared and charged at her. He was unarmed but massive, easily 3 times Maya's weight. His fists could crush bones. Maya waited until the last second then. She grabbed his arm as he passed, used his momentum against him, and sent him crashing into the conference table. The table splintered under his weight. Pulled a concealed knife from her clothing. She was fast, trained, dangerous. She slashed at Maya's throat in a killing strike. Maya blocked with her forearm, the blade cutting through her sleeve but missing skin. She twisted his wrist, forcing her to drop the knife, then drove her knee into the stomach. The twins tried to flank her. Maya shot one in the leg, then turned and caught the other's punch. She redirected his energy, pulled him off balance, and threw him into a group of approaching guards. They all went down in a tangle of limbs. More guards were outside the sealed bulkheads now, trying to override the emergency protocols. Maya had maybe 2 more minutes before they broke through. She needed to move faster. She dropped the empty plasma pistol and picked up another from a fallen guard. The remaining crime bosses and their guards were backing toward the far wall, finally understanding that they were trapped with a predator. "Who are you?" demanded, blood streaming from a cut on his head. "Just someone who cares," Maya replied. Then she raised the pistol. But before she could fire, the observation balcony exploded. Not from her doing. Someone else had breached the conference room. Maya looked up to see a figure in black armor dropping through the smoke, weapon raised. Station security. A full assault team. They must have her false alarm and realize something real was happening. The lead security officer pointed his weapon at Maya. "Drop it, now." Maya looked at the crime bosses, then at the security team, then back at the bosses. She'd come so close, but she couldn't fight both the crime bosses' guards and a station security assault team. Not even she was that good. She lowered the pistol. "Hands on your head," the security officer ordered. "Everyone on the ground." The crime bosses and their surviving guards dropped to the floor. Maya knelt slowly, placing her hands on her head. But her mind was still working, still calculating. The security team spread out, weapons trained on everyone. "You're all under arrest," the lead officer announced. "Station violation of the peace. Weapons discharge in a secure area. You'll be detained until—" "Wait," a voice said from the entrance. Walked into the conference room, flanked by a squad of GU security officers. "These people are wanted by the Galactic Union on charges of trafficking, kidnapping, and murder. We have warrants for all of them." The station security officer turned to him. "This is Obsidian Station. GU jurisdiction doesn't apply here." "Actually, it does," held up a 3 hours ago, the station's ownership consortium declared bankruptcy due to a sudden discovery of their involvement in multiple criminal operations. The GU assumed emergency administration of the station pending investigation. As of 2 hours ago, Obsidian Station is under full GU authority. Maya allowed herself a small smile, had been busy. The station security officer looked at his own, confirming the information. His expression went from confident to uncertain. We weren't informed of this. You are now, your cooperation is appreciated, but these criminals are coming with us. Over the next 30 minutes, GU security took all 8 crime bosses and their surviving guards into custody. They were thorough, documenting everything, ensuring the arrests would hold up in court. Maya watched from the side, still kneeling with her hands on her head. Finally approached her. You can stand up now. She did, stretching muscles that had been tensed for too long. You destroyed half a conference room, said, caused a station-wide emergency alert, and took down 8 of the galaxy's most dangerous criminals with nothing but stolen tools and a maintenance uniform. Technically, I only caused a false alarm. The conference room destruction was collateral damage. Do you have any idea how much paperwork this is going to generate? You're welcome, Maya said quietly. Shook his head, but she could see the hint of a smile. The captives from 7 wanted me to give you a message. They said thank you doesn't seem like enough, but it's all they have, so thank you. They don't need to thank me. Maybe not, but they wanted you to know anyway. He paused. What will you do now? This operation is finished. The network is broken. Every major player is either in custody or running for their lives. Maya looked at the handcuffed crime bosses being led away. Then she pulled out her and showed a file. I've been tracking trafficking operations for 7 years. This network was big, but it's not the only one. There are others. Different organizations, different methods, but the same victims, people who have no one to fight for them. And you're going to fight for them, said. It wasn't a question. Someone has to. The GU could use someone with your skills. Official position, resources, legal authority. You could do more good working with us than alone. Maya considered it. She'd been alone for so long, operating in the shadows, always on the edge. Working with the GU would mean rules, procedures, accountability. But it would also mean resources, intelligence, and the ability to act on a larger scale. She really looked at him. He was a good man, she could see that. Someone who genuinely wanted to help people. He'd proven that by his actions on 7 and here on Obsidian Station. I'll think about it, she finally said. That's all I ask. Handed her a data chip. My contact information, if you ever need anything, equipment, intelligence, backup, call me. The GU owes you for what you did here. That debt won't be forgotten. Maya took the chip and nodded. Then she walked toward the exit, past the detained criminals and the busy security officers. No one tried to stop her. As she reached the door, one of the crime bosses called out to her. Who are you, really? Maya paused and looked back. All 8 of them were staring at her, these powerful criminals who'd thought themselves untouchable. Now they were in chains, destroyed by one quiet woman they'd never even heard of. I'm nobody, Maya said. Just someone who remembered that silence doesn't mean weakness. That being quiet doesn't mean being helpless, and that sometimes the most dangerous hunters are the ones you never see coming. She left the conference room and made her way back through the executive level. The maintenance uniform was torn and stained now, but she still blended in with the station's workers, just another invisible person in a crowded galaxy. 3 days later, Maya sat in a transport ship heading toward the outer rim. She'd left Obsidian Station quietly, the same way she'd arrived. The news feeds were full of stories about the mass arrest of trafficking kingpins, the dismantling of a major criminal network, and the mysterious operative who'd made it all possible. They were calling her the Ghost of 7 now. Some reports claimed she was a secret GU operative. Others said she was a vigilante with a vendetta. A few suggested she was just a myth, a story the criminals told to explain their own failures. Maya didn't care what they called her. She opened her and looked at the image she kept locked behind encryption. Sarah's smile looked back at her, forever frozen in that moment before everything had gone wrong. I'm still fighting for them, Maya whispered to the image. For you and everyone like you, I won't stop until every last one of these operations is burned to the ground. A new message appeared on her. It was from an encrypted source routed through multiple relays. The message was brief. Trafficking operation discovered on Colony World Epsilon 9. Estimated 30 captives. Local authorities compromised. Requires immediate intervention. Maya stared at the message for a long moment. She'd told herself after Obsidian Station that she'd take a break, rest, maybe even consider offer to work with the GU officially. She'd promised herself she'd try to find some peace. But peace was for people who didn't have ghosts, and Maya had been haunted for 7 years. She pulled out the data Chip had given her and held it in her hand. Official resources, legal authority, backup when she needed it. It was tempting. Then she looked back at Sarah's picture and made her decision. She deleted the data Chip's information and typed a response to the encrypted message. Arrival estimated in 4 days. Send all available intelligence on Epsilon 9 operation. The transport ship hummed through space, carrying her toward another colony, another operation, another group of victims who needed someone to fight for them. And Maya, the woman they thought was just quiet, was on her way to remind the galaxy's predators that humans had evolved to be hunters too. And some of humanity's best hunters were the ones who moved through the world in silence, barely noticed, until the moment they struck. She was nobody, she was invisible, she was quiet. And that made her the most dangerous kind of hunter in the galaxy. The transport ship continued its journey through the stars, and Maya closed her eyes, already planning her next operation. The fight wasn't over. It would never be over, not while there were still victims who needed saving. But that was fine. Maya had found her purpose in the darkness. She'd found a way to honor Sarah's memory and give meaning to all the pain. She was the ghost in the machine, the shadow that criminals feared, the quiet fury that struck without warning. And she would never stop hunting. 68 hours until the meeting. 8 of the galaxy's most dangerous criminals in one room. 68 armed guards between her and them. She smiled slightly. The odds were getting better. Just someone who cares, she said. Then she disappeared into the crowd of workers and security personnel, becoming invisible once more. Maya lay down on her bed, still fully dressed, and closed her eyes. She needed rest, because tomorrow would come looking for her, and she'd be ready. Or Maya would die trying.